building the Dune Buggy, the Meyers Manx, and the very first one, I set the very first record in Baja, where there was the beginning of off-road racing. There were some records laid down by professional motorcycle riders, and I tackled them with the very first Meyers Manx, and I beat them by over 5 hours. And then I gathered that all up and publicized it, and I caused the whole beginning of the off-road racing sport.
Please come with the money, or you keep the car.
We were in the movies big time. Oh yeah. Yeah, Steve McQueen and Elvis Presley, and I can't think of all the people. They were raced in Baja by Jim Garner. The publicity that the thing gathered was not because I'm a clever guy about steering the business or buying the right ads. It just seemed that it caught on because the car looks like fun, and that's an easy sell. Anytime you're trying to sell youth or staying young, hanging on to your youth, that's easy. So just driving one around is fun because you get all these thumbs ups and all these cheers and bravado. So I accidentally stumbled onto something, and my instincts, of course, are strong about having fun. I'm closely associated to the beach because I grew up along the beach outside of Los Angeles, Hermosa, Manhattan Beach. And in those days, this is all in the 30s, 40s, I was one of the first of those people that were the surfing world. The very first surfboard that was commercially made was the Pacific Homes board. It was made out of redwood and balsa wood, and they were like 10, 12 feet long, and they weighed 80 to 100 pounds and more. And I couldn't afford anything like that, but as a kid in junior high school, I built a paddleboard. A paddleboard was a wooden frame with a 1/4-inch plywood deck and bottom, and they had a cork in them, and you drained the water out of them. But as a little boy of 8 or 10 years old, you saw the older guy that was 18 maybe, and when he fell off a surfboard, there was no leashes, there was no wetsuits either. So they fell off their board and the board came ashore. Well, the little kids on the beach were able to grab the board, and the first thing you have to learn to do when you're surfing is to paddle the board correctly, trim it fore and aft. And of course you'd usually pour the water out of it, pull the plug, you get on the board and you pedal it back to the kid that's coming ashore. So that's the way you learn to surf, was by first of all grabbing up other surfboards and paddling them back out to the guy that lost it. And eventually you wound up getting your own. I was in the Navy in World War II, and I wound up on a carrier, which was the flagship of the Task Force 38, the largest assemblage of men and ships the world has ever seen in any naval battle. And being on the flagship, when there's kamikazes coming from Japan, they're looking for the big one. Well, they're way up high, and they look down, they see these 3 carriers, and the one in the middle is the flagship. And it's surrounded by all the, over the horizon in every direction are ships. But occasionally you get a chance to do something good, and I was in gunnery. I was on a gun out on deck where you could see the action, 5-inch 38s, and I was 7 months on that ship. I don't know how many I may have shot down with the crew. That's another whole story about the kamikaze, and my experience with it was Talk about adventures, huh? That'll bring a sweat to you. As I evolved into a teenager where I could have my own board made out of balsa wood, I became friends to some of the ancients of the whole sport. Dale Velzy was a dear friend. I grew up alongside of him, and I was a glasser for him once. He was the very first commercial surfboard maker outside of Pacific Homes, and he was a character that nobody will ever forget. A wonderfully charismatic man. And then later in his life, I shaped his boards. Still, I was in the balsa wood area. So my surfing experience is one of a lot of long, old memories with the first names in that sport. And the Bing Copeland and Greg Knoll, I built his very first surfboard for him. And that surfboard was made out of an old life raft from World War II. The life rafts off of the ships were made out of balsa wood. And they were wrapped with canvas tape and painted gray. And Velzy and I, in another car, we went and snuck some out of a field one night in Inglewood, another little town nearby, and swiped these big rafts, hauled them home on our 32 three-window coupes, and uncovered them and pulled out the balsa wood, which was in little short blocks. You know, balsa wood comes in a male and female. The male is very heavy and is full of knots, and that's what they were made of. But the good balsa wood that you use for a surfboard is female balsa. It's much lighter, and it's straight and long-grained. So what we found was balsa wood, all right, but it was of the worst kind. Well, the board I shaped and glued up for it was okay as far as the shape went, but it didn't float very well because it was kind of heavy. So I sold it to this little kid that was, at the time, I think he was about 15 or 16 years old, for $10. That was Greg Knoll. And Greg Knoll was the world's biggest name in big wave riding later in life. I'm very fortunate to have been born at the time that I have been born. And the years that I've lived through the beginning of surfing as a huge business, the Dune Buggy, that war, broken my legs racing, and I limp around on a stainless steel ankle today. But I would never tell anybody to slow down. Waiting on the front porch, rocking in a chair, not me. See, so I'm passionate about what I do. I think that's what you need to be. Whatever you do, let it all out. Let's go for it. If there's some dangers along the way, that makes it more interesting.